Hi, Catherine Smith here. We're just going to have a quick look today at why invest in Toowoomba. Presented by myself, Catherine Smith of Holistic Financial Solutions. Have a number of diplomas and degrees, but more importantly, I like to point out that I'm a passionate property investor and have been for over 20 years. Been following the property market since I bought my first property at the age 17, and I've bought in all states of Australia and bought and sold many properties. So having said all that, let's just have a look at Toowoomba. Toowoomba plays a role in the capital of the West. It's situated 130 kilometres west of Brisbane CBD, about 90 minutes, and I've driven that myself quite a few times lately. Toowoomba is known as the gateway to the Darling Downs agricultural region and the Surrey Basin mining gas precinct. In fact, it's known as a triangle between Gladstone, where they export all the mining materials, the mines themselves, and Toowoomba. Toowoomba is Queensland's third largest city. It has around 165 full-time residents in the region, but the population is expected to increase to over 200,000 within 10 years and close to 245,000 within the next 20. It equates to 3,500 new people a year, or 1,300 new homes needed each year. And within a generation, Toowoomba has the potential to double its population. A little bit more about the land price and demographics. So I just said on the last slide that there's 1,300 new houses needed per year. Currently, only 750 new lots receive approval per year, and this slowed down greatly in the last few years after the floods. So based on the estimated need for 1,300 new dwellings a year, the reality is that Toowoomba is certainly not providing enough stock to the market, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. It's a well-known fact that today's property hotspots are where billions of dollars are being invested in long-term resource development. Queensland's Surrey Basin is the hottest, with more than 180 billion either underway or committed in the next 30 years. I will explain more about some of the projects in a moment. So Toowoomba has, for those that don't know about it, over 60 primary schools, 7 state schools, 13 independent prep to high schools, special needs schools, TAFE, and South East Queensland University. Over 150 parks and gardens, and capital city standard retail services based around the $350 million redevelopment of the shopping centres. 4 major hospitals and a full range of capital city health services. From 2011 census, Toowoomba was actually ranked number 15 in the largest cities in Australia. So some people, when they hear about Toowoomba, and Toowoomba is starting to appear in the property magazines as a hotspot, they think, well, Toowoomba, why Toowoomba? But it is actually in the top 20 largest cities. The current projects underway, and these are all taken off Terry Ryder's latest top 10 hotspots around Australia. Terry lists the top 10 in Australia, but he doesn't list them number 1 to 10, he just mentions 10. When I read through the entire report, Toowoomba had far more projects than all of the others almost put together. So there's the Australian Pacific LNG project, 30 billion. Queensland Curtis LNG project, 15 billion. Gladstone LNG project, 16 billion. And what I like about the LNG projects is it's more focused on the natural gas as opposed to the coal mining. Coal mining has been, in some people's opinions, hitting a bit of a standstill at the moment, but natural gas certainly isn't. LNG venture, 10 billion. They're also doing a lot of work on the railway, the Border Railway project of 1 billion. They're developing a Surrey Basin rail link from Toowoomba to Gladstone for 1 billion. There's a coals to liquid project only 20 kilometres south of Toowoomba that's costing 3.5 billion. There's water treatment plant in Chinchilla for 350 million. Toowoomba Range rail upgrade for 50 million. The Toowoomba Airport upgrade for 10 million. The Toowoomba bypass for 10 million. There's more. A lot of roadworks are happening in the area. They're doing an inner city bypass at 1.4 million. They're upgrading the range at 55 million. They're working on the CBD roads with 28 million. They're upgrading the Gore Highway, another 20 million. They're upgrading the Warrego Highway for another $100 million. Amazing amount of roadworks for a small area. More current projects. They're upgrading the hospital at a cost of $19 million. They're redeveloping the shopping centre of $350 million. They're upgrading retail development in East Toowoomba for $10 million. This is exciting. There's a new industrial park at $80 million. What's so exciting about that? Basically, Toowoomba has an incredibly large amount of industrial going on there. I've been to Toowoomba a number of times lately, and there's literally suburbs of industrial with all the big enterprises that you can imagine, Boral, CSG, etc., all supplying the materials needed out to the mining areas. So the Whitmac Industrial Park is another $80 million worth of industrial construction going on for more industrial businesses to come into Toowoomba. We're also doing the Arts Centre at $5.5 million and a lot more, but I thought I'd listed enough by now. But one of the projects that really caught my attention is the Wellcamp Airport. In the Terry Ryder report, it basically says that the airport is going to cater for 500,000 passengers a year, and it's actually going to be an international terminal. That surprises me. Even Canberra hasn't managed to achieve that yet. But the Terry Ryder report says that it is only proposed and that it's been objected to. What I found out by going to Toowoomba and actually having a look at the airport itself is that it's not only proposed, it's almost complete. In fact, I've got video footage on YouTube of it. Not very clear because I couldn't get close, but there was trucks and cranes and 50 to 100 cars parked at the terminal doing the building construction work. The tarmacs are laid. Basically, it's almost ready to go. The property investing market do not know about this yet, and I'm not planning to spread this widely. It's only for my own local and my client base knowledge. I believe once this news gets out to the property market, we'll start seeing Toowoomba move very, very quickly. In fact, what I've found already is that Toowoomba is starting to move, but it's in the beginning of the phases, so we've still got time. So what will happen when that news gets out? I don't know, but I certainly want to get into Toowoomba before it does. Just having a look at all the spending projects I spoke about, and also just wanting to point out here that a lot of people get concerned about mining areas because they think that if there's a bust in the mining sector, the area will turn into a ghost town. That's not going to happen with Toowoomba. And I certainly do not recommend mining areas that are pure mining, where if the mines shut down, they'll turn into ghost towns. I don't recommend that. What I recommend is areas that have a lot of other industry going for them. So out of all those projects I just mentioned, 2.4 million of them are mining and energy, but there's also 2 million into infrastructure and services, and 517 million into property and construction. So as I said, there's still a lot of other services happening. So as I just spoke about, the Sarrat Basin and Toowoomba is not dependent on any one industry or commodity. Toowoomba also has the coal, gas, power generation, solar energy, coal seam gas and water projects. Also has rail infrastructure, farming and agriculture, tourism, manufacturing and building, and all the supporting businesses in that area. I've also got video footage on YouTube of the trucks going through Toowoomba. So whenever I read all these economic, demographic, statistical analysis, it all sort of gels in my head, but it doesn't actually form into concrete opinions until I've been to the area and seen it. And what I saw in Toowoomba, they're simply sat there having coffee on the main road, and there are trucks hammering up the main road all day, every day. Probably not a good thing to buy a property on the main road, but for Toowoomba itself, it's just evidence of the amount of activity going through that town, heading out into the mining areas. So the area's economy is protected from a downturn if one industry sector endures a bad period. There's also thousands of new jobs being created, and the housing needs to be built to accommodate all these new people. Toowoomba has recently been dubbed the employment capital of Australia, and with the lowest unemployment rate in Australia. Toowoomba has got bad press. It's had major flooding and it's also had major droughts. Both of these issues have been fixed. The local water supply problem has been solved by the completion of a 38-kilometre pipeline from the Wivenhoe Dam in 2010, and the flooding that occurred was devastating on a human level, but it has actually been fixed. When you go to Toowoomba, it's up the top of a major range. It's amazing how it flooded in the first place. What it actually was a storm water problem from all the new developments. Town Council hadn't quite got it right. They have now fixed it. Both the federal government, the state and the local government all chipped in, I forget the amount of billions, but a lot, to get the problem fixed so that it won't happen again. Just a bit of the demographics, the age groups, they're pretty well spread out amongst all age groups, nothing really alarming or surprising there. The gross household weekly income also is just spread out quite nicely, with the majority of it being in the other range, whichever that would be. Hopefully that would be more than $1,000 a week. But either which way, there's nothing outstanding there. It's pretty typical across areas such as this. The occupation, so this one is important. This is once again pointing out that it's not driven just by mining. There is a lot of different occupation and industry going on in Toowoomba. The dwelling structure, a few flats there, a few semi-detached houses, majority of it being separate house and land. Tenure type, this one's very, very standard across the region and in almost everywhere I like to invest. The proportion of renters, about 30%, is quite standard. What I do like is the 38.9 fully owned. Makes actually Toowoomba a very wealthy area because a lot more people own their house than they are actually renting. Okay, so the market expectations. So I've already commented on a lot of Terry Ryder's material, but also Michael Matusik, another big thinker or an valuer and economist in the property market, has also stated that Toowoomba is 6 o'clock on the property clock. What that means for those that don't know about the property clock is that it's at the bottom of the market and positioned for an upswing in the coming cycles. Okay, a lot of media coverage, and this is something I do want to talk about. Media coverage is starting to come out about Toowoomba. I would have actually liked to get my clients into Toowoomba before it started, but unfortunately other people have cottoned on to the same things that I have. However, Toowoomba is only just starting to appear in the magazines. It's nowhere near as much as other areas have appeared in the past. If anybody has been following the market and think back to Mackay and Gladstone, Mackay and Gladstone were hotspots in the property magazines for 2 to 3 years. Now they are at the top of their upswing, but it took that long. Toowoomba is, definitely starting to appear, but it's only in the beginning. I've only probably seen it over the last few months. So what that means is that we do actually have plenty of time to try and get into this market before it moves. So rarely do we find an investment environment as perfect as Toowoomba in 2013. It's very livable and affordable and strong job growth prospects and a desperate undersupply of housing. So the city is set for decades of growth. So as usual, once I've found an area, I go there, I have a look at the best of the best, I narrow down the suburbs to invest, I narrow down the best builders to work with, and I start getting packages together available for my clients, which I do have. And it's probably another point worth mentioning. It took me many, many months, which is why I've delayed putting out this video, to actually get my hands on some good stock. Once again, just pointing to the undersupply in Toowoomba. Other areas, I have pages and pages and pages of stock. In Toowoomba, I have actually had none up until now, and getting the packages I've got have only been a result of me actually going to Toowoomba and sitting in a builder's foyer and saying, I'm not leaving until you talk to me. It's taken me that long to actually get my hands on some packages. So they are available, they will be in short supply, and they certainly will be moving in price as we move into the next next year. Anyone who's serious about property investing really should talk to me about these packages now, and at least well before Christmas, so we can get you in. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear from you soon.